The following clip is presented to you by The Extreme Life of Matt Hardy, available every Friday wherever you get your podcasts and at extremehardy.com. Around Survivor Series of 2005, he makes a big return to stare down Randy Orton, and a little chaos ensues at this time, Matt Hardy. And there were some internet rumors that you caught some heat that night. What can you tell us about this particular pay-per-view?
Yeah, it's good. I've always wanted to actually speak out on this, so this is a great opportunity. So basically, what had happened there? So I had just finished up my program with Edge, and the reason I ended up doing the loser leave Raw match that we had to blow it off is just that they wanted to have us on separate brands, just at that point, so we don't have to continuously run into each other or wrestle each other, whatever, because we had like this drastic blood feud. So Vince thought that was the best solution to just kind of separate us at that time. So I go into SmackDown, and I'm still very hot. I'm doing some really cool stuff. Have a lot of momentum behind me, whatever. And then there was a couple different plans for me at Survivor Series. At one point, I was going to be on the main Survivor Series team as a babyface, and then there was a time where it also got changed, and I was going to wrestle Eddie Guerrero in a one-on-one match, which both of those would have been great matches for me and would have had a great feel to it. But it ended up, as we all know, very tragically, Eddie passed away before that. And then his death just threw a lot of stuff up in the air for that card. So things changed. I ended up not even being on the card at all. And I remember showing some frustrations. I was flying in for that pay-per-view, and I sat beside Pat Patterson and Jerry Briscoe, and we were getting off the plane. They were talking. They said, "Oh, it's okay, kid. You know, these things happen. You know, it is what it is. Just keep doing your thing and make sure you protect yourself. You've got a lot of equity. You've got a lot of build. You got to protect yourself and look good." So then we got there that day, and I wasn't on the card. I just thought I was going to be there hanging out, watching the show, and then I'd, work the next night following the pay-per-view. But it ends up there was a list of names of people that were going to be in the ring at the end, like celebrating. And then, Taker comes to the ring, and then he was going to clear some of those guys. And my name was in it. I remember I was going to Vince at that time because I had I had FaceTime with him. And I said, "Was my name meant to be on this list? Do you want me to be out there?" He said, "Well, yeah, I think it's fine because I need someone, that people give a shit about out there. It's very good to have some equity out in the ring whenever Taker comes, so it doesn't just look like a bunch of extras who are just going to get beat up and take choke slams." And I said, "Well, what do you want me to do out there?" He said, "Oh, well, don't." He said, "Don't take a choke slam. Don't get beat up." He said, "I just powder out. You guys figure out how you want to do it, but just powder out." He said, "I don't want you to bump." I was like, "Okay, cool." So once again, we went out there, we did that, and I was planning on powdering out, but there was a part of me that was just so frustrated. And once again, it is my fault. I will be accountable for it. And just when Taker came out, I was like laying on the ropes, and I didn't react to him like I should have. And looking back in hindsight, I was like, what a dumb move that was. And I was just like mad because I didn't get my spot once again, which was very dumb. And it was a great lesson for me to learn. Like, if you're going to do anything, like, go all in on it. And that was a great lesson that I learned at that time. I was upset because I wasn't getting a match or a great spot on the pay-per-view that I was going to be getting. So that was like a little bit of a temper tantrum. So once again, I'm accountable for it. And I remember like nobody even really noticed it first when I jumped out, but I guess JBL like went back and saw the tape, and he got people fired up the next day at TV. And he said, "Look, we got to talk to this guy." And it was like Taker was so mad about it. It wasn't even a wrestler's court thing and fun. I remember he came into a catering, people were around, and they played the footage back. Like, "What were you thinking? What were you thinking?" And I just said right there, I remember he was so mad, almost like I felt like he was shaking, and I was just like, and I was at this point where I'd just been fired. I'd came back. I'd done this feud. I was almost untouchable emotionally at that point. You started to fuck with me after everything I'd been through. And I said, "I'm sorry." I said, "I do apologize for it. And I wish I hadn't have done it. I did it. So I'll do whatever it will take to make it right." And Marie's like, at the very end, "Okay, that's fine." And then for the next 2 or 3 months, there were points where I was just pretty much doing jobs. I was putting people over the majority of the time, and that was my punishment. And I'm pretty sure that's what pushed Viscera to do the deal. Like, people talk about that Royal Rumble clip where he jumped on me and he was like giving me his gimmick where he was something. Well, once again, it was just like I was having to pay my penance, and I did it for like 3 months, and I just rolled with it. And then at the very end, there was a point where I talked with Taker, and he said, "Thank you for apologizing. We're good." And then just everything stopped.
So do you think he went to Vince and was like, "Hey, let's punish Matt a little bit here," or someone else picked up on it?
100%. Yeah. He said, "We got to teach. We've got to teach him a lesson."
Wow.
I'm certain of that. I mean, and they're not wrong. Like, once again, it happened to me, and I'm not going to play a victim card in that. It was dumb what I did, And I went through and paid my penance, much like I did in my story in AEW last year that I was trying to tell.
Fascinating. That is really, really interesting. So you weren't supposed to take any bumps because there are rumors that you're supposed to like take a choke slam.
Yeah,
but
no,
you deliberately were told not to bump.
I mean that specifically came from Vince,
Yep.
face to face. But I should have, like, when he came out of the casket, I should have sold for him and freaked out like, oh my God, Undertaker's coming as soon as he hit the ring, then powder out. But like I was just like very subtle and almost like laid back on the ropes and like not reacting to it. And looking back in hindsight, I look like a dickhead sitting there. So it was my fault and I'm accountable. And that's one of the things I feel like if you learn to own stuff in life, it's a good thing to like stay very real with yourself.
But also, I also think it speaks pretty positively about him that he was able to say, okay, appreciate your apology. You paid your penance and let's move on. Let's move forward and put it behind us. Because as you and I both know, that doesn't happen all the time in wrestling. No matter how irrational something may be, people will hold grudges over stuff that didn't even happen. And that's just something that routinely happens in wrestling.